Hey, what is going on, guys? In this video today, we're going to be discussing the current debate over mobility in Fortnite. Forms of extra mobility / fast travel have pretty much been available in Fortnite since the very beginning of the game. However, it seems like ever since rifts and ATKs were added at the beginning of Season 5, the amount of new forms of mobility being added to the game has increased at a pretty insane pace. And to kind of prove that, let me list off every single item in the game which has the primary ability of increasing your speed of movement in some form. Starting with naturally spawning forms of mobility, we have the stormwing plane, quadcrasher, ATK, shopping cart, ziplines, and the few remaining rifts which are still on the map. And then on top of that, in terms of items, rifts to go, launch pads, grapplers, and balloons. Plus, if that doesn't seem like enough, we're still expecting the driftboard to be added at some point in the near future, and there are also a ton of additional mobility items which have been sent to the vault and could potentially be returned to the game at any moment. And just to clarify a bit here, when it comes to mobility in Fortnite, I don't think anybody really disagrees with the idea that Fortnite needs at least some additional mobility. The map is simply too large for 100 players to only be able to move around on foot. But the question that many people are wondering is, has Epic gone too far with the amount of mobility that they've added and continue to add to the game? It's a very interesting debate that I'm excited to break down, and without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so let's start this video off by going over the main arguments used by people who believe that Fortnite has overdone the amount of mobility in their game. One of the less obvious and more interesting arguments, in my opinion, is the fact that there's so much mobility in the game now that it basically takes away almost all of the importance of rotations. Back in the earlier seasons of Fortnite, knowing how to rotate the map safely and effectively was not only important for getting wins, but probably the most important thing for getting high kill games. I mean, one of the earliest videos I ever made on this channel was basically just a 12-minute long explanation of the exact rotation I use for high kill games. And being able to predict rotations from other players based on things like the initial bus path and storm position was an essential skill to being a great Fortnite player. And here's a really good example of this. If you guys remember the weekly Keemstar Friday Fortnite pub stomping tournaments, the winners would almost always be whichever team was best at predicting enemy rotations. And I believe that's one of the biggest reasons why Tfue and Cloak would win on such a consistent basis. They were so good at exactly that. But what you've seen over the past few seasons is that because of all of the added mobility, rotating is now quicker and easier than ever. This leads to it being almost impossible to predict where enemies are going to rotate to and from. What's the point of even trying to predict rotations when any team could use something like a plane or a rift to go and get from one side of the map to another within maybe 1 or 2 minutes? It's sad to see a skill that used to be so important now be almost totally useless because of all of the mobility. On top of that, the amount of mobility in the game and ease of rotations is making it so that players are dying faster than ever before and games are ending quicker than ever before. Let me show you guys just a funny little picture I found online that really highlights how bad this problem has gotten in some cases. Look at how large this circle is, and then look at the circled amount of players still alive in the match. Obviously, this is one of the most extreme cases I've ever seen, with only 13 people left in that large of a circle, but the rate at which players are dying and games are ending is definitely at an all-time high, and I can prove it. If you guys watched the video I uploaded a few days ago where I almost got a 31 kill game, I mentioned that the full and unedited files of the gameplays you see on my channel are usually between about 18 and 20 minutes long. And what was so unique about that gameplay is that it was a little under 15 minutes long. I thought that was just a total outlier at the time, but what I've seen over the past 2 to 3 weeks especially is that the length of these full games I'm playing are now almost always in the 15 to 17 minute range, when they used to almost always be in the 18 to 20 minute range. That may only sound like a small difference of a few minutes, but a game that only lasts 16 minutes is a whopping 20% shorter than a game that lasts 20 minutes, so it's definitely noticeable. And I can understand at first some people may think that games ending quicker is a good thing, but but trust me, it definitely isn't. These games that last 15 to 16 minutes usually look something like this. About 60 to 70% of players dying in the first 4 to 5 minutes, then maybe 20 to 25% die in the next 8 to 10 minutes, and finally the remaining 10% or so die in the final 2 to 3 minutes. And this problem only continues to become worse because it leads to people basically being forced to choose between hot dropping at places like Tilted, Pleasant, and Retail, or landing outskirts and risking not seeing anybody for the first 10 minutes of the game, especially if you land somewhere that isn't near any plane spawns. And of course, you can't bring up the negatives of too much mobility without bringing up the fact that it increases third partying. And this is especially true with planes, because not only are they the fastest method of fast travel in the game, but they also allow you to fly high in the air and basically get a bird's eye view of everything going on below you. This allows you to basically just pick and choose fights whenever you want them. And what you're starting to see is that specific parts of the map are turning into almost third-party hot zones. For example, the plain mountain that sits between Tilted, Dusty, and Salty. It seems to almost always have multiple teams fighting either on or around it. There have seriously been times where I saw a team up there, pushed them to try to get kills, and then ended up getting third, fourth, fifth, and maybe even sixth partied. That may be exaggerating a bit, but you guys know what I mean. There have always been areas of the map which tend to get the most action, but it's been taken to a new level recently with all the mobility. And I think the funniest thing about all the new mobility, especially on the vehicle side of things, is that the older vehicles are starting to become almost outdated in a sense. Honest question for you guys, when was the last time you saw anybody use either an ATK or a shopping cart in one of your games? Odds are it's been a while, and if it hasn't, you can at least admit that seeing them actually being used by players is incredibly rare. It's honestly gotten to a point where if Fortnite just secretly vaulted shopping carts one day, it would probably take the Fortnite community at least a couple of hours to even notice it. So I think that covers the majority of arguments from the anti-mobility side of things. Now, I just want to quickly go over the other side of the equation and talk about why more mobility may not be as bad as it seems. The first important point that needs to be discussed is the fact that the Fortnite map got a pretty sizable expansion at the beginning of Season 7. I'd say with the new towns added in the ice biome, the map is maybe 10% bigger now than it was before the season. So it only makes sense to add at least some more mobility into the game. I also like the fact that more mobility has made dying to the storm, at least for me, a much less frequent occurrence. Those were definitely some of the most frustrating RNG deaths in the entire game, when you'd get a storm circle that moves to the total opposite side of the map from where you are, and then if you get caught up in a fight with another team, you're basically guaranteed to die unless you have a mobility item / vehicle. So I think that's something we can probably all agree is a positive. But I think the most interesting argument that supports the idea that more mobility isn't the problem is something I kinda touched on a bit earlier in the video. The mindset of the average Fortnite player has changed dramatically over the past 2 to 3 seasons. Now, it seems like the majority of people have the mindset of playing as aggressive as possible 24/7. And on top of that, the main focus of a lot of players has shifted from trying to get wins to now trying to get high kill games. This aggressive mindset leads to a lot of players who would rather risk dying at a hot drop than settle on having a low kill, low action game. It also leads to players basically running straight towards any type of gunfire they hear. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with this at all. That's the way I've always tried to play, and I've always said it's the most fun way to play. However, it's definitely possible that because of this aggressive mindset, mobility isn't the #1 thing we should be blaming for the increase of third partying and decrease in the length of games. Obviously, things like planes, rifts, and launch pads enable players to play more aggressive than ever before, but I'm not entirely convinced that removing certain forms of mobility would just suddenly stop all the other contributing problems. Most notably, the landing overpopulation of places like Tilted, Retail, and Salty. It's a very interesting debate, and I think we should pay close attention to how Epic handles it over the next few weeks, especially because I don't see planes going anywhere until at least the beginning of Season 8. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you watched the entire thing, be sure to let me know with a comment down in the comment section below. First off, let me know the last time you saw anybody using an ATK/shopping cart, and also let me know any general thoughts you have on mobility, and specifically the amount of mobility available in Fortnite. Be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications, do whatever the heck you want, and I will catch you guys next time.